some really interesting stuff before.
Yeah.
I've not thought about, and it was about, we talked about what we would, some of the things that we'd actually discussed today in the videos and so forth. And standard sort of thing is talking about where pickups sit and so forth within the body, and it's pretty well established. And what people want to actually hear, it's been established from the Bible of Fender, where a lot of these pickups will actually go and work, and moving things around only minutely can change things. Your classic thing is your bridge position pickup,
60s,
70s type of thing. Is it real? Yeah, it is, and it's only 5 to 8 millimeters. It's only a small amount. You can move things around a bit. You can get more or less mud or definition into that sweet P-base position or the neck position on a lot of your bases as well. But realistically, and even when I set out, say, a 35-inch scale instrument as opposed to a 34, I do actually figure out the position of those according to the scale length. So I don't actually place those in the same sort of position as a 34-inch scale base. So this at 35 has to be adjusted so it's in the same kind of sweet spot relevant to
the scale length.
Yeah, and it's the same with 36. You've got, like, if you've got a 36er that's got a single pickup, whether it's a a bridge type pickup for a fretless type of job or something like that, you've got to think about, well, what's that relevant position for a 36-inch that's going to give you, well, either a 60s or a 70s type of tone. And likewise with the single pickup type of thing. Federa do the Anthony Jackson model with a single pickup, and I'm sure they're looking at, where's that big fat sound like a P bass. That's what they've hunted out there with that type of thing. But you came up with another really interesting thing that I've not thought about before, and that is, actually you might want to explain about this one. That's about the number of frets and where you're striking it to create that slap sound. This is a really...
So one of the things I found is with a lot of 24 fret basses is that they don't have that classic slap tone when you play them. They're a little bit more mid-rangey. It's hard to get that nice fat scoop. And part of my thinking maybe is because the number of frets. So if you have a 24 fret bass, which is this 20?
That's 22 on that one.
22.
Yep.
So you had a 24 fret bass, it would come to about here or so.
That's right.
So you'd actually slapping here instead of here.
Yeah.
The string's more taut here.
Yeah.
Whereas here there's a bit more bounce to it, a bit more fatness.
It does. Yeah, the string will vibrate further.
Like the effect you get from playing over the fingerboard to playing over here. It makes sense that it would have the same kind of tonal issue from here.
Because that's one thing when I build and set up basses, that I do want to hear the difference. I'll play up here and in what I call the Jayco Pastorius thing, and then I'm listening for that double bass, sweet big double bass sound up over here. Can I get that sort of thing going? And it changes as you come along the string. It changes.
It's an interesting, and then so normally if you've got 24 frets, the pickups might be slightly further towards the bridge as well.
They often are.
And so
you're forced to.
That's going to affect. You're not getting that 60s or 70s jazz bass sound from a 24 fret humbucker potentially further back to the bridge. So that's something to think about if you do. If you do play slap bass, if you are into that or you like that certain sound and you're questioning why you can't get it.
Yeah.
It could be. I think Federa, Mike Pope from. I don't know if you've ever seen Mike Pope's custom bass from Federa.
No.
So the Mike Pope Viceroy bass, you should check this out on YouTube. Is a 24 fret bass, but the last 3 or 4 frets of the fingerboard is magnetic and removable.
Oh no, I have seen that. Yeah.
So you can take it out, and you get your 21 fret bass.
Then you can get back up
and you
there.
can get that slap tone.
I've seen that thing. I know the thing you're talking about.
So I think that's actually what sparked my thinking about it.
Yeah. We think there is more energy produced by notes, in the string up in this sort of area as opposed to back over here.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. I mean, things like on jazz guitars, big jazz box guitars, they've got pickups way up here. As further they can go towards the middle of the string, the fatter it sort of sounds, and you can hear it when you're with your right hand when you're actually playing the
It's definitely something to think about.
Got to be something in there.
Fingerstyle to slap style.
That may be a first. You might have come up with a
Mike Pope from Federa, but
Yeah. Nobody said anything. You've said it now.
Really, yeah, you know, and that's just through having a 24 fret bass.
Yeah.
And going, why doesn't it sound like the 21 fret thing?
Yeah, because the Fender, you know, because some of them are only 20 frets and all that sort of stuff. Really, just short number of frets, but boy, they got that sound. There it is.
Exactly.
It's really big. Even a P bass, a slapped P bass, sounds like a Mack truck sometimes too, doesn't it? It's got a really big sound. Yeah. That's interesting. So, we'll call that the Craig theory. I reckon there could be something in that. There could be something in that.
Classic bass player discussion issue situation: active versus passive. So one thing I've noticed about your basses, which I really like, and with the F bass that I play, is that when the preamp is on neutral and you switch between active and passive, the tonal characteristic of the bass
very similar
is negligible. It doesn't really change much, and I think that's testament to you know, the sound of the wood really coming through the pickups and all working together, and that's one of the things that I would definitely look for if you're looking at an active bass, is that the preamp isn't imparting too much tonality when it's off. You know, I've played basses where the preamp is in, you know, neutral position, the tone controls are off, and you switch between it, and there's a massive volume change.
And you do hear that with the Aguilar, and I've felt that with the Nordstrand as well. These ones, the current production, are Glockenklang, and one of the selling things with the Glockenklang preamps, whether it's a 2-band or a 3-band, is that they say that it's almost inaudible when you're going from active to passive, because you actually do see it, or you hear that big jump, and it's almost mid-song you couldn't do it. You've either got to pick one or the other and dial in the right volume level and go with that. But these, when people play them, they're a bit surprised. I pull out the master volume knob, and bang, goes into same thing, and it flicks into it, and like, oh really? You can hear the change of the sound, because it's, you know, it's not got all that other stuff going on in there, but the colorization.
Maybe you could just demonstrate it. Do you want to pass me that the lead down there on the floor?
Yeah, sure.
I'll plug it in, and you can just hear.
Are we live on the?
We just got to press. See the little right hand button?
The mute button?
Yep.
Alright.
So, preamp flat. Preamp flat but on. Preamp off.
Not a lot there, is it?
Still sounds like the same bass.
Yes, it does. It does. The other thing I like about these Glocks is that the treble also works as a treble roll-off that you can do in passive mode.
Excellent.
Now, some other preamp makers are actually getting on board with that, and there's always a frustration. They're doing it. Nordstrand in their current production have just gone to that sort of thing as well. These were I bought these through this series of preamps through George at
Bass Direct.
Yeah, Bass Gear Direct, isn't it? And it's fantastic. Like he's wonderful to deal with as well. So I chose to deal with him with buying these, and had done a lot of reading. Had a student in class who'd incorporated one of these into one of his basses. Great sounding thing. And I just love the fact that you could actually roll off treble in passive mode. And
definitely.
Look, because I've got a couple of basses over there in the rack that have, one's got an Aguilar and one's got a Nordstrand. The thing that upsets me about those things, they're both great sounding preamps, but you go to passive mode, and I love being able to roll some of the top end off.
Exactly, yeah.
And you want a big thumping sound sometimes.
And you only need 3 knobs, for example. On my F, I've got volume, tone, like a jazz.
Yes.
And then bass, mid, treble.
Yeah, you've got more.
So the tone control works in both active and passive.
Ah, good, yeah.
But obviously the preamp's only in active.
Yeah.
So you can eliminate a knob.
Yeah.
And it's always good to eliminate knobs in life.
Well, yeah, indeed, that's true. It is in so many ways. Yeah. So the the active versus passive thing. I was saying before that I started a thread on Ozbass Forum probably about 6 or 12 months ago, and it was a little bit like pouring petrol on the ground and throwing a match into it. It took off in all sorts of different directions, took on a life of its own, because it really polarises people about active or passive. Where should we go with all that sort of stuff? And my question was at the time, with modern day amps, the ability to tone sculpt at the amp, have we now gone past the requirement of having onboard preamps, because we can do so much at the amp? Once upon a time you couldn't, you know, that was the reason for doing all that sort of stuff, because you really wanted to be able to do that you know, on the fly while you're playing. And people very, very much into the old school type of thing. No, it messes around with your sound. Keep it simple. Keep it passive. And other people were like, no, I want to be able to do it on the fly. I want to be able to. So it's very, very polarising. And one of the forum members sort of said, well, look, if you're building exotic basses or more upmarket types of things, it kind of just has to be there, you know. So, and that's the reason why I don't build any of my production stuff without them. It's not that I like it more than a passive type of situation, but it's the person was right, and it was a bit like, oh yeah, that's true. You know, if they're spending the dollar on it, they will expect that to be there, unless you're actually building something for someone that specifies, no, it's going to be a passive instrument. And on that sort of note, when I do build a passive instrument, I build the ability within the structure of the actual bass for it to be converted to an active instrument. It's important, and there's some stuff that you can do inside the control cavity that sets it up to be converted later on, whether they sell it on and you can do something for someone later on. You know, because when you're drilling holes in the top of an exotic top or something like that, there's got to be a certain thickness for the components to work within, and you need to have all that right, because even to have the configuration set up, you know, so I've got one client at the moment that I'm quoting on and sorting through a job, and that'll have he wants a Mike Pope preamp in that.
Excellent.
And beautiful preamps, but he wants it as a passive instrument first. He may live with it as a passive instrument, but he wants the ability somewhere down the track to go, no, active. I need to do that, and all my band situation requires that sort of stuff. So
it's definitely a useful thing to have, but it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me, I don't think. If I picked up a bass and plugged it in and it felt great and it sounded great and it was passive, I wouldn't. Yeah,
you'd live with it.
In saying that,
in
saying that, I used to have a Lakeland Darryl Jones, and I ended up putting an active preamp in that because I was after that Marcus Miller jazz thing, and I couldn't get it.
You need to pull the centre out and really
I had to have that basement thing, you know. But it's like I was saying to you earlier on, a lot of bass players, it seems like if you've started out on the active bass thing, eventually people come round to just your meat and potatoes Fender P-bass passive or your J-bass thing.
It does.
You plug it in, and if it's a good one,
it
sounds good, you know. And there's just something organic about not having it, knowing that it's just going from fingers, string, pickup, and out.
You know? Absolutely. It's a funny thing. I've got a friend who is quite a collector, maybe even a hoarder of basses, and he's got all sorts of exotica. You name it, he's got it. Fantastic. It's a great. For me, as a builder, it's been fantastic to be able to lay my hands on a lot of exotic things that you generally only see on the internet or in magazines and so forth. All of them have got preamp this and preamp that, and you know, all the bells and whistles. And he, with the builds that he gets me to do for him now, has gone to passive instruments. Even beyond that, it's like pick up to an output, maybe an on-off switch, and it's all about him being able to control. Like, he has nice preamps and all the things that you need in the actual at the coalface back on the actual amplifier. But he's got to the point where as a player, he wants to be able to dictate everything by what he can do with his hands. And he's got to that point as a player where he can do that.
It's much more of an organic thing.
Yeah, very much so. So he wants the ability to attack the strings hard and for it to sound like that, but he wants it to be, if it's soft, it's soft. It's all up to him.
But I think preamp technology has definitely come a very long way, especially since the 80s, 90s, when you were those active EMG things.
Yes.
I don't know. I've been there.
Okay.
I think it's definitely come a long way. Like hearing the squawk and clang and the Aguilar stuff and the F-bass things, they are much more enhancing instead of imparting their own tone on
Yes,
it. And
yes.
I think it's important to think about marrying up your preamp with your pickups with whatever kind of bass you have.
Yeah,
You know, they all kind of work together.
they do.
as well.
It is very much a marriage of lots of different parts and so forth.
And I think that's why people maybe question the price tag on, you know, high-end handmade basses and stuff like that. But what I found is you're paying for knowledge of wood, you know, ergonomics, and knowing what components work together.
Yes.
Which takes, as I'm sure you know, a
Takes a
lot
little
of
while.
time and
Yeah.
and error. And that's why a lot of people, when they buy these warmer things and stick them together,
Yeah.
it may all look great on paper, but you stick them together, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's why,
Yeah.
you know, you pay the money you
to
get
get that to get that right. Fortunately, with my with building and teaching people how to build guitars and basses, and a lot more people building basses these days that come to me to do that type of thing, I have the luxury of them bringing lots of different things in as far as pickups and preamps, and so I can actually I get to hear a lot of these things. Like we were talking before about the Sadowski pickups and the Sadowski preamp, and those things are a formidable force. I had a student that bought those things in, and it just about the power out of that bass was ridiculous. It was just you were saying about the warning that they supplied, do not turn up all the way, and it's obvious when so. But I wouldn't have known about that unless I'd actually had students coming in and bring these things, and I've come across some beautiful pickups and P-bass pickups and things like that, and some of them not necessarily high-end things that have just been wonderful.
Definitely, the market today is it's really good in terms of bass gear technology. I think it's come a long way.
It does. It has indeed.
And you've obviously talked about your appreciation for Federa. And you can't go past Leo Fender. I always find it amazing how right he got it back in 1950, whatever. When
I was thinking about that on the way over here today, because I think there's still three leading companies around the world. Federa have definitely led the way with the big single cut type of instrument, neck through type of instrument. There was a reason behind that, and that's from the Anthony Jackson days when they were putting that type of instrument together. They connected the body to the neck a long way up, because Anthony Jackson wanted to build this big contrabass type thing. He wanted extended range. He wanted 36-inch scale and 6 strings and so forth, and they were unsure whether the neck was actually going to be able to take that kind of pressure from the strings and so forth. So that's where that came from. It was actually about shortening up the bit that could be bent from the strings. And still so many companies around the world are still looking to them as a bit of a design cue and so forth. They're an interesting thing. I've actually sort of seen some of the really early sort of stuff that they did back in the maybe late 80s, early 90s sort of stuff. And some of it was pretty clunky and weird looking. It played really nice, beautifully built. But they've actually now got to a point where they've sort of stabilised, and they've got maybe a half a dozen styles that they build in that they've evolved to. So it's been a real evolution. And some of their early stuff looks damn weird. And I've played it, and it's like, wow, they didn't quite get the proportions of that right. And some of the stuff now is beautiful. They've really nailed a lot of the shapes and construction techniques. They know what they're doing with there. But the early stuff was, there's times there where things didn't work, and obviously they were moving through it as well. They've obviously evolved, because they're looking at it going, that's not quite right. Leo Fender. You think about the P-bass and the jazz bass, it hasn't evolved at all as far as body shape goes. Well, not much. There's been a few derivative things that they've done off it. But to get it right like that, that's amazing. And remember, he wasn't a player. He was just a designer and a maker of electronics and that sort of stuff. So that's quite extraordinary. I was thinking about that very thing coming over here, and I love designing and building and so forth, and you can sort of see where the DNA of some of my things have come from, and especially with the bolt-on neck type construction and some of this type of thing. The other company that is an interesting one, and it's kind of polarising, I guess, with what they do, is Dingwall. So as a modern construction. It's a really interesting sort of thing they're doing with the fan frets. I think they're a company that a lot of other musical instrument companies are looking at, going, oh, they're kind of designing like that. They're leading the way with that type of thing, and they're kind of gravitating towards where they're going with that type of their builds.
They've been around for a while, though, Dingwall.
They have, yeah. But it's kind of like, for whatever reason now, they've gained more momentum.
Yeah.
They've got more people playing that type of thing. They've gone to it's 37 inches on the bottom of their on their B string, and it does make a certain sound. Very big, bold sort of sound. For me, they're not handmade instruments. They would have upmarket versions that are, a lot more. Actually, that's a funny thing. Handmade. Every instrument's handmade. There's no machine that actually puts it together in the end and all that sort of stuff. But it's an amazing piece of industrial design. That's what I look at it like, because they do look like they look like a bit of a weapon, don't they? But they're not really influencing my builds, but I actually can see that they're influencing a lot of other people around the place. So Federa, obviously, Fender, classic sort of things, and Dingwall are really sort of influencing a lot of people. And look, mimicking. What did they say about mimicking? Is the
greatest form of
flattery, something like that. Yeah, and it's true, and I'm sure it's frustrating if you're coming up with the original type of thing. But if you are a groundbreaker and a leader,
you're always going to be known as that.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know?